Barely 3 years since playing his final NHL game, Henrik Lundqvist takes his rightful spot in the Hockey Hall of Fame. We're reminiscing about his legendary career and also recalling an unreal story that led to him playing goalie in the first place. All this and much more on today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers.
You're Locked On the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 940 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, and we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, Henrik Lundqvist, absolutely legendary career with the New York Rangers, and as I mentioned just a second ago, little more than 3 years after he played his final NHL game, and that, of course, occurred during the bubble playoffs when the Rangers were in the qualifying round and unfortunately got swept out of the playoffs in front of no fans. That turned out to be Henrik Lundqvist's last game in the NHL. He was bought out and unfortunately had the heart condition and rightfully stepped away from the game to obviously address himself and his health, and seems to be doing very well. Obviously he's an analyst on MSG as well as TNT, and does a phenomenal job with that, as a lot of us thought that he probably would. Obviously, he was cool under pressure as a player, and the same can also be said for him as an analyst. But Monday night, induction ceremony for the Hockey Hall of Fame, Henrik Lundqvist among several other inductees, and he actually spoke last at the ceremony, and he was joined by his wife, his two daughters, his parents, his twin brother Joel, who he obviously played with back in Sweden. And Joel also, played a handful of seasons with the Dallas Stars in the NHL. But to kind of just take you guys through the night, and then I also want to go ahead and reminisce about, some of my personal favorite Henrik Lundqvist moments. And I'm sure they're pretty high on the list for a lot of you guys as well. And if you're watching on YouTube or, you want to send me an email, whatever it might be, to share your favorite Henrik Lundqvist memories, by all means, please feel free to do so. Always good hearing from you guys and hearing some other stories and some other perspectives, especially something like this. Again, just reminiscing casually about Henrik Lundqvist and his legendary career. So there's a brief introduction. They showed a highlight package from his career, and I really have to thank the folks that put this together, because not only was it a fantastic highlight package and a great trip down memory lane, but it also basically did my work for me, because when you're trying to sum up everything that Henrik Lundqvist did in his career and everything on his resume, it's quite the lengthy resume. And the fact that this is all included in a fairly short highlight video of his career, that's awesome. Makes things easy for me. So, so basically the video, it shows Henrik Lundqvist being one of the stars in Madison Square Garden. Of course, they announced the 3 stars at the end of every game, and he goes over and flips the puck into the stands, and you can hear the announcer saying, one of the announcers says the crowd loves it, and the other announcer said, I think he likes it too. And yeah, it's one of those things where it feels like almost instantaneously, Henrik Lundqvist and Ranger fans, there was just kind of an instant connection there. It just feels like this guy was always born to be a New York Ranger. And obviously he burst onto the scene, 7th round pick. He was an afterthought during that year's draft, but he ends up making the team eventually. And after a couple of years of playing in Sweden, he starts his first season as Kevin Weekes' backup. Weekes gets injured. Henrik Lundqvist steps in, and the rest is pretty much history. Just a phenomenal career after that. But yeah, there was always just that connection between Ranger fans and Henrik Lundqvist. They also mentioned, this is something that I've gone back to often on here when talking about Henrik Lundqvist, the fact that not only was Lundqvist a 7th round draft pick, there were 21 goalies drafted ahead of him. We actually did an entire episode about that a couple of years ago. We took a look at the 21 goalies drafted ahead of Lundqvist, and there were a few good ones, a couple guys that, had solid careers, maybe even an all-star or two in the mix there, but nobody that could even come close to holding a candle to Henrik Lundqvist in that draft class. Kind of in general, but certainly as far as goalies are concerned. So I always just marvel at that fact. The fact that, again, every team in the NHL passed on this guy, including the Rangers, passed on this guy 6 times. There were 21 goalies drafted in front of him, and look at the career he ends up having. But he played for Sweden. He was the best goalie or voted the best goalie in the Swedish League 3 times. NHL debut in 2005, set a franchise record for wins by a rookie goalie. He was a Vezina nominee right away. Only goalie to win 20-plus games in 13 straight seasons. That is just remarkable consistency, especially when you think of all the phenomenal goalies that have played this sport. None of them have been quite that consistent on that level as Henrik Lundqvist was for 13 straight seasons. Of course, he wins the Vezina in 2012, wins 459 regular season games, 64 shutouts. Both are franchise records, 243 career goals against, and a 918 save percentage, 130 playoff games, winningest European-born goalie in NHL history, 6 all-time in wins, Olympic gold medalist in 2006, represented Sweden 12 times at the national level, won IIHF gold. They won the gold medal when he actually made a save in a shootout to clinch the gold medal for Sweden the one year. So just a phenomenal resume. We could honestly keep going, but we have to mention some other things as well. So Patrick Waugh, he presented Henrik Lundqvist at the ceremony with his Hall of Fame plaque. You get a quick photo op with Patrick Waugh. And I thought this was really nice. Lundqvist actually started his induction speech, I guess you could call it, by congratulating his fellow inductees for this year's class. And that includes Tom Barrasso, Ken Hitchcock, Pierre Lacroix, Caroline Ouellette, Pierre Turgeon, and Mike Vernon, and just said it was incredible getting to know them. And that is a heck of a Hall of Fame class there. So it's cool that Henrik Lundqvist had good company, for this year's induction ceremony. But, he talks about going from a sandpit in Åre, Sweden. I hope I'm saying that right. I'm doing my best. I think that's how it's pronounced. That's kind of how Lundqvist said it. But he goes from that to playing in Madison Square Garden and the Hall of Fame. You can tell, like, even to this day, it kind of blows his mind a little bit. Certainly, Henrik Lundqvist is not somebody that's, I think, ever lacked confidence or belief in himself. But to go from, again, just complete obscurity to dominating the NHL in Madison Square Garden with the Rangers, and of course now being into the Hall of Fame, I think it has to make your head spin at least a little bit, even for somebody like Henrik Lundqvist. And he also mentioned that as a kid, his first 2 games as goalie gave up 30 goals. I'm not sure if maybe it is accurate. He might be exaggerating just to get a laugh, which he did, but that's pretty wild to think about too. Thanked his teammates, says he kind of apologized to his teammates too, because he said he thinks of himself as a pretty chill guy away from the rink. But this is what he said: at the rink come game time, I was not chill. And he went on to say he was not the easiest guy to be around. Admitted that he loves winning, but that anytime they lost, it would really affect him. And he thanked his teammates for, at times, quote, telling me to be quiet and not yell so much. So there's that. He also thanked all of his coaches, but take a guess which coach he singled out and really had to give props to. Yeah, that would be Benoit Allaire. Coached Henrik Lundqvist for 15 years. And this is what he said to Allaire: "You inspired me in so many ways, and you made it fun. Best coach and best friend you could ask for." Also thanked his agents, thanked the Rangers organization. He mentioned that the Ranger organization is family. He thanked Jim Dolan, who was in attendance, calls him Jim rather than James. Also thanked Glenn Sather. He was also there. Thanked the Ranger fans for all the love and support that they gave him during his career and continue to give him now. And got a little bit choked up talking about his family. His parents were there, brother Joel, sister Gabriella. He said that Gabriella was his biggest supporter, told his parents that it was incredible how much you sacrificed for us. And for Joel, he said, "The impact you had on me as a person and as a player cannot be overstated." Then they showed a picture of the two of them on the ice playing for Sweden with their IIHF gold medals. And of note, I did not realize this, but apparently Joel Lundqvist was the captain of at least one of those teams that he and Henrik played on for Sweden. So that's kind of interesting too. But then he mentioned his family, wife Therese, daughters Charlize and Julie. He said, "Thank you for your support and the love you give me each day. Therese, you were an absolute rock throughout my career." And then he went on to say that hockey guided me through life and gave me purpose. And he closed by saying, "Thank you for this huge honor and all the memories that I'll bring with me for the rest of my life. Thank you so much." And what I thought was really cool is once he called it a speech here, and he didn't talk for that long. It was probably only about 10 minutes or so. So, every speech is going to be a little bit different. But Henrik Lundqvist basically said what he felt he needed to say, and did so very effectively in a fairly short amount of time, at least as far as Hall of Fame speeches go. But I thought he was awesome here. And once he was done, another round of Henrik chants. It's not quite the same as it was, when he's in Madison Square Garden as a player, or even going back now during his, ceremony where they put his jersey into the rafters. But you still get those Henrik chants. It still takes you back. It still gives you goosebumps. And it was still a pretty cool moment seeing that happen during this ceremony at the end of Henrik's speech there. Something else, you know what? I'll save this for just a second later here, but I want to talk about something that he said recently. He didn't say it during the ceremony, but it did happen recently. We'll get to that in just a second. But first, let's go ahead and let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Sleeper. A new NHL season brings all sorts of possibilities. Artemi Panarin could score 50 goals. The New York Rangers could hoist a Stanley Cup. And you could win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports and especially daily fantasy hockey. Because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. All you have to do is pick whether studs like Panarin or Igor or Mika Zibanejad will record more or less than their Sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more in a given game. To win 100 times your bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8-player stats. You heard me, Ranger fans. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper, so start paying attention and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you will get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. All right, we just want to go ahead and thank everybody, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And for the everydayers, you guys are definitely going to want to stick around. In our next episode, we're going to be doing a crossover episode with Trey Matthews of Locked On New Jersey Devils. That's going to be happening a little bit later this week. I believe that's still the plan. Definitely looking forward to that. Always nice time talking hockey with Trey. And for the next episode, we'll see what we get into. But, obviously have to get creative right now with the Rangers, in a little bit of a break here. 5 straight days off. Not exactly the ideal time for a break when, you're rolling the way the Rangers are rolling. But by that same token, they do have some injuries. We'll just hope that those guys can get healthy by the time that the Rangers play the New Jersey Devils. So this one last thing that I want to mention here, and again, he did not say this during the ceremony, but not too long ago, he talked about how he had the heart issues and he had to step away from hockey. And that was after he signed the 1-year deal with the Washington Capitals. And obviously after the Rangers had bought him out of the last year of his contract, he was ready to keep going and keep playing. But he said, regarding that whole situation, that he was really only ever meant to play for the New York Rangers. He said that was kind of his takeaway from that. So, look, obviously it would have been nice if he could have ended his career on his own terms. Clearly he wanted to keep playing, but it is kind of nice to see that, he found peace with it and just kind of sees it, I guess, it's like a sign almost that he was only ever meant to play hockey, at least NHL hockey, for the New York Rangers. So I wanted to also make mention of this. There's a story between Henrik Lundqvist and Joel Lundqvist, and I think a lot of people are pretty familiar with it. A lot of you, as soon as I say that, probably know where I'm going with it, but it's a pretty wild story and one that I don't think I've ever really thought about it like as deeply as maybe I should have. But here's how the story goes. Again, a lot of you have probably heard this, but some people may not have. We have some new fans every now and then, and some other people might need a refresher. But basically, you've got a situation way back in the day. Henrik Lundqvist, Joel Lundqvist, twin brothers, their kids, they're attending a hockey camp together. And there's a situation where the coach or the instructor or whatever it was basically asked the group of kids there who would like to play goalie. And at that moment, nobody really volunteered. Nobody really, jumped up or anything like that. And apparently what happened, to hear Henrik Lundqvist tell this story, as he's told in the past, Joel grabbed Henrik's arm and lifted it into the air, raised his arm for him, basically volunteered his brother for the goalie position. And as they say, the rest is history. But, again, a lot of us have heard this story, but really think about how crazy this whole situation is, because Lundqvist didn't volunteer. He got volunteered by his brother. I'm just wondering, what if some other kid at that camp had raised his arm first before that even happened, and that kid ends up playing goalie instead of Henrik Lundqvist? Or what if Henrik had the same idea that Joel did, and instead of Joel raising Henrik's arm, you get Henrik raising Joel's arm and lifts it into the air, and now all of a sudden Joel Lundqvist is going to play goalie? I mean, could Henrik Lundqvist have made it to the NHL as a defenseman? Would Joel have been any good as a goalie? It's just really wild to think about this, that it all basically started as, one twin brother basically playing a prank on his twin brother, and that's what it was here. It obviously worked out pretty nicely for Henrik Lundqvist, but I do like to think that even without Joel raising Henrik's arm in this situation here, that Henrik would have eventually found his true calling and eventually would have said, "What the hey, let me throw on the goalie pads and see if I'm any good at this." But there's no guarantees that that would have happened. Like this one, like, just very simple, lighthearted, fun moment in history leads Henrik Lundqvist down a path of superstardom, obviously fame and fortune, being a legendary goalie, and now a spot in the Hockey Hall of Fame. It really is wild to think that something that simple can have that much of, a ripple effect. And look where Henrik Lundqvist is now. So it's pretty awesome. And it really is just crazy to think how much different everything could have been had Joel Lundqvist not taken the initiative there to basically just volunteer his brother to play the goalie position. And again, I mean, who knows what happens if that incident doesn't happen? It's at least possible. Again, I like to think that Hank would have eventually found his way to the crease and gotten in net and tried to find out if he's any good at it, but there's no guarantees that that would have happened. So really a cool, interesting story, and one that I always think is kind of interesting and kind of fun to look back on. So, we as Ranger fans, obviously we're very appreciative of Henrik Lundqvist, and we're always thankful for everything he did and all the moments that he had and all the moments that he gave us, all the big playoff wins and, the Winter Classic. We're going to get to some of his biggest moments in just a short while here. But I think, the next time we're thinking about Hank and being so happy and so thankful for everything he did, we should think about Joel too, because Joel kind of set this whole thing, this whole legendary career in motion just by goofing on his brother at a hockey camp. So just pretty wild to think about, and pretty cool to know everything that happened after, that happened at the hockey camp there. So yeah, awesome stuff, fun stuff. And I want to keep everything rolling here. I do want to still get to some of my favorite Henrik Lundqvist moments. And, I'm sure a lot of these moments will be on your guys' list as well. We'll get to that in just a second. But first, definitely want to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Jace Medical. We spend a lot of time talking together, you and I. We get fired up together on wins and losses, who starts and who sits. I'm thankful for that connection that we have. And today, I want our chat to be a little bit more personal. Go online right now at jacemedical.com to receive your 12-month supply on your daily medication. Remember to use promo code LOCKEDON at checkout for a discount as well. A verified customer had this to say about Jace. I am thankful for the service. Supply chain issues caused me to cut pills in half to have it. I ordered most of my daily meds with a year's supply. I also ordered antibiotic kit. I feel secure now. Prices are lower than local pharmacies. I highly recommend this for everyone. If you or someone you love would get peace of mind by having a year's supply of any daily med, go to jacemedical.com to see if it is offered for you. Remember to use promo code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your purchase. Again, that is promo code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off of your purchase. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here. I figure we can wrap up today's Henrik Lundqvist-centric episode by talking a little bit about, some of the best moments from his career. These are pretty high on my list, everything that I'm going to mention here. And again, I'm sure you guys have yours as well. And if you do and you want to share, send me an email, leave it in the comment section on YouTube. Would love to hear from you guys there as well. But just to kind of run through the gauntlet here, as far as some moments that stand out for me. So there's one that I don't think a lot of people are really going to remember. This one's the more obscure one on this list. And this isn't a ranking or anything like that. I'm just going to jump around from thing to thing throughout different parts of his career. But one thing that's kind of obscure is Henrik Lundqvist. It's a game that I attended, which is one of the reasons why I remember this. Otherwise, I'm not so sure that I would. But I was there with my dad. They're playing the Flyers. The Rangers are up 3-1, getting pretty late in the game, down to about 30 seconds or so to go. The puck goes on net, and Henrik Lundqvist tries to shoot it down the ice into the empty net, and it backfired. The puck was turned over, and I don't remember who scored for the Flyers, but somebody put it into the Ranger net. Now, of course, the Rangers held on for the 3-2 win. And then I remember as we were getting ready to leave the Garden, they show the player interviews on the screen there, and somebody was interviewing Henrik Lundqvist backstage, and the first question they asked was, Hank, were you shooting for the empty net there? And Hank goes, maybe. So that was pretty funny. We always talk about Igor Shesterkin, and I do think he'll eventually get one sooner or later, but Hank decided to shoot his shot there, and unfortunately it just didn't work. But obviously the Rangers still won the game, and I have to believe if the Rangers were only up by 1 goal, he probably would not have done that because Henrik Lundqvist, as awesome as he was, his strength wasn't exactly puck handling. I do think he got a little bit better at it as his career went on. He struggled a little bit with that early in his career and eventually got better at it. But yeah, just kind of an interesting random moment that I remember. Speaking of the Flyers, Henrik Lundqvist beat them at the Winter Classic in 2012. A lot of you are going to remember this game as well. Rangers won it 3-2. 2 goals scored by Mike Rupp. Henrik Lundqvist stopped 34 36 shots. And the moment that I think everybody remembers is at the end of this game, and Rangers were down 2-0 in this game, by the way, and they scored 3 unanswered goals to go up 3-2. We're getting down to less than a minute left. They call Ryan McDonagh for covering the puck in the crease, which I believe was something of a controversial call. But the penalty for that, of course, is that the Flyers now get a penalty shot, and they can choose any of their skaters on the ice to take that shot. They go with Danny Briere, and what do you think happens? Of course, Henrik Lundqvist stones him and just wasn't going to let the puck get by him, and the Rangers hang on to win that game 3-2. And by the way, the Rangers in outdoor games in Henrik Lundqvist's career, he started all 4 of them. They went 4-0. Henrik Lundqvist was never defeated outside in the NHL. 2 were Winter Classics. The other 2 weren't officially the Winter Classic, but they were outdoor games. One against the Islanders, one against the Devils. And then there was also this game, the most recent of any of Hank's outdoor games. Winter Classic in 2018 with Henrik Lundqvist against the Sabres. The Rangers win 3-2 in overtime. Overtime winner by JT Miller. And Lundqvist, of course, won that game as well with 31 saves. And like I said, 4-0 in outdoor games was Henrik Lundqvist. But, you know, for me, and I'm sure for a lot of you as well, these moments are all well and good, but the playoffs is where he really shined the brightest, I think. And as far as just a couple of memories, I mean, I'll always think about Game 6 against the Canadiens, Rangers up 3-2. Game 6 in Madison Square Garden. You certainly don't want to go back to Montreal. And obviously that didn't end up happening because the Rangers won that game 1-0. Henrik Lundqvist with a shutout and the only goal scored by Dominic Moore. And the moment that everybody remembers from this game is a save that is very difficult to describe. It was basically Henrik Lundqvist doing a cartwheel and almost making 2 saves in one, if that makes any sense. The bottom line, I can't do this justice with any words I'm going to say here. If you haven't seen this save in a while, do yourself a favor. Just go YouTube it, check it out. No words that I say or anybody else says can adequately describe the phenomenal save that this was. And of course, that was part of his shutout. The Rangers win the game 1-0. They go to the Stanley Cup Finals for the first time in 20 years. I'll also always remember, you know, some of the comebacks that the Rangers had. The 3-1 comeback against the Caps in 2015. Games 5 and 7 both went to overtime. Henrik Lundqvist won both of those games. And, you know, of course, the Derek Stepan overtime in Game 7. Everybody will always remember that. But I also remember in Game 5 of that series. So Rangers are down 3-1, and they have to pull Henrik Lundqvist. This is how close they were to being eliminated. And they pull Hank. Another skater jumps onto the ice. Hank is, you know, saying to the bench as fast as he can. And as he's heading to the bench, the Rangers actually score the game-tying goal. Off the top of my head, I want to say it was Chris Kreider. I don't know that for sure. But Lundqvist never broke stride. You know, the goal was scored, and Lundqvist was getting close to the bench. But instead of going into the bench, you know, obviously the goal was scored, and he just put his arms up to celebrate the goal, and then basically just circled right back around and went right back into his crease. Because at that point, obviously the game was tied. I'll also remember big first round matchup against the Devils in either 2007 or 2008, but it was him against Marty Brodeur. That was the series where Sean Avery just kind of took over and did whatever he wanted and drove Brodeur crazy. But Henrik Lundqvist outdueling Marty Brodeur in a 4-1 series win and a big playoff series win for the Rangers there. As far as like kind of a lighter moment, I mean, how about him squirting Sidney Crosby with his water bottle during a playoff series? There was a big scrum, and Crosby was throwing a fit near the end of a game, and Lundqvist skates by, squirts him with his water bottle. Hank ended up getting fined $5,000 for that, but I doubt he cares very much about that. He did all right for himself throughout his career. But then, to me, the premier moment, the one that I'll always remember, and really it's a series of moments, but just the 3-1 series comeback against the Pittsburgh Penguins in 2014. This was, of course, the year where they went on to the Stanley Cup Final, and they're down, 3-1. They lose game 3 at home. They lose game 4 at home. It just does not look good at all. And they come storming back. Henrik Lundqvist was phenomenal the rest of the way in this series, and especially in Game 7, and especially the third period of Game 7. Rangers were up 2-1 in Pittsburgh against the Penguins in Game 7, and the Rangers had a couple of defensive breakdowns in that third period there, and Henrik Lundqvist was not going to let the puck get by him. I've said this before. That game could have gone 6 periods with the Rangers still up 2-1. Lundqvist had made up his mind that this puck is not getting by me. We're going to close this out. We're going on to the next round. And you will not see a better single period of goaltending play than this third period in Game 7 against the Penguins, which, by the way, I mean, it doesn't get any bigger than that, does it? It's Game 7. The winner goes on. Your team is up by a goal, and you need to stand on your head and make just all kinds of ridiculous acrobatic saves to ensure that your team hangs on to the lead, and that's exactly what Henrik Lundqvist did. And for me, that's the best moment of his career, the best win of his career, and the win that I think tells you what he's all about more than any other win that Henrik Lundqvist ever had throughout his entire NHL career. But figure we can call it there. Like I said, just wanted to give props to Henrik Lundqvist in this episode. Anytime he achieves something major like this, like, he his jersey went into Garden Rafters last year, and obviously we talked about that, and now into the Hockey Hall of Fame. And I try to always mix it up a little bit. I thought today I'd go into greater detail on the story of Joel Lundqvist raising Henrik's arm and how that basically set Henrik Lundqvist on his path to becoming a legendary goaltender for the New York Rangers. Fun stuff. And just a great ceremony, great speech from Henrik Lundqvist. And again, taking his rightful place in the Hockey Hall of Fame. We all knew he was going there. It was just a matter of exactly when it would happen. And it has now happened. And again, just a wonderful ceremony and a wonderful moment for us Ranger fans to reflect, everything that Henrik Lundqvist did. Just a phenomenal career and a class act all the way. But that will do it for today, guys. Once again, if you'd like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that is @LO_NY_Rangers. And definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.